Very excited to welcome back to the Jim Masters Show, a good friend of our show and a revered entertainment journalist, but just an incredible journalist all the way around. He has been doing this work for a long time, and he's also a published author. And he's excited to share something very near and dear to his heart. And it's commemorating a very special anniversary that is coming up as well, which is quite exciting. Nelson Aspen back with us here on the show, my friend. Welcome back.
I thank you so much, Jim. It's great to be back. I feel like this is getting to be a habit. I'm going to have to keep writing books and doing musicals just to keep coming back if you'll have me.
Absolutely. And, I think it's really cool what you're doing here with this project. It's really revolved around the Titanic. Tell us about what it inspired, what inspired you to do it? What are some of those things that pointed you in the direction of wanting to do it and to do it now, sort of in line with the anniversary? Because it's really big and it's very important.
Yeah, my connection to the Titanic is really my entire life. So at least as long of my life as I can remember. So that's just about 60 years. I'm 61, and from my earliest memories, I've had a connection to the Titanic that took me decades to figure out. Before there was an internet, before James Cameron did his movie, there were all these sort of coincidences and happenstances, and I knew that someday I would tell my story, and someday is here now with the release of my ninth book, but it's my first historical fantasy, and it's my first Titanic book. It's called Kindred Spirits, A Titanic Tale, and it is very, not so loosely based on my connection with a random passenger from the Titanic who perished on that terrible night in April of 1912. And, it's easy. I'm not the kind of person that believes in metaphysical things. I don't tend to operate that way. However, when life throws you signs, dreams, coincidences, happenstance, after a while, you have to start paying attention. And I do believe that I'm connected to this passenger whose name was Milton Long. No, I was not the Unsinkable Molly Brown. I think I was just this random sort of under the radar character named Milton who perished at the age of 29. And I always sort of assumed in some way I was picking up the baton for him. He died young, he died alone, and from everything I can gather, and there's not a lot of information available about him, I had to imagine what his life would have been and I knew sort of his movements. How did he end up on the Titanic? Why did he end up on the Titanic, etc.? And that's all in the book. And I've taken fictional liberties with it, of course. But this connection is so strong, and I was waiting for the right time. And the release of the book it's not a coincidence that it's in tandem with the April anniversary of the sinking. But the time was right for me to write the book, I think, because I appeared in a documentary called Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, where I was telling my story of my connection with Milton. And the filmmaker of the documentary and I got along so well, we started a podcast called Titanic Talk. And it was just meant to be a few episodes to promote the documentary. And we've done over 50 episodes, and it's become highly popular. And it wasn't just talking to fans of Titanic, the movie, or Titanic, the historical event. We started talking to oceanographers and divers and authors and historians and descendants of people that were on the Titanic. And so I suddenly found myself in the throes of Titanic mania and decided now was the time to write the book. And as I said, it was my ninth book. But this is my first historical fantasy. And the publishers were like, okay, we'll go along with you doing another book for us, but we would like it to be set in the present day. And if you recall, my previous books, because they were memoirs, took place through the 80s and the 90s and the aughts. So I had to sort of fictionalize it. And rather than it be Milton coming into me, I created a younger, more modern version of me. So I like to think of it as an odd couple story. We can all identify with buddy movies, odd couple scenarios. So you have this repressed Edwardian uptight guy from 1912 and this extroverted young flamboyant New Yorker of today, two souls, one body, having to solve a mystery that involves an unrequited love from Titanic. So it becomes something to follow along, and there are lots of Easter eggs, I guess you could call them, to Titanic legend. And so it's a great way for me to honor those who not only love Titanic, but were affected negatively by Titanic, and it's a way to tell their stories.
Yeah, you mentioned the reincarnation storyline is based on your own lifelong experiences, sort of uncovering the metaphysical connections to Titanic victim Milton Long. When did you first realize that? When did that connection come your way? How long ago?
Childhood, and it was more than just a fascination with water and ocean liners. I mean, lots of kids like to play with fire engines or toy boats or race cars. For me, it was always ocean liners, and it always involved tragedy. But it wasn't in a morbid or a macabre kind of way. It was just a little boy playing with ships. And I coincidentally had a recurring dream that I still have on occasion, but it was very prevalent in my childhood. We lived in a big old farmhouse in Pennsylvania, and we would slide down the banister. If anybody grew up with a banister, you know that that's something for sliding. Kids want to slide down the banister. But in my dreams, I would be sliding down the banister, but instead of getting off at the bottom, I would just keep going into the blackness. And it wasn't a scary dream. It was just it was just remarkable because I had it often. And years later, I pinpointed, and I couldn't even identify him as Milton. It was just a passenger described that he couldn't swim well. So to try and get off the ship, he straddled the railing of the ship that was at an angle as it sunk, and he straddled the railing as if riding a banister. But when he got to the water, thinking he could swim away, he was pulled under into the black waters. So it was a direct mirror image of my dream. Then when I eventually found out this person's name was Milton, I pride myself on enunciation. That's what you and I do in our business. We have to speak clearly.
Mhm.
And I have always been able to manage to spit out my name well, Nelson. But I am constantly, as recently as last week, mistakenly addressed as Milton, not a common name these days or any day in my lifetime, to the
Right.
point of when the Titanic wreck was discovered in the late 80s by oceanographer Robert Ballard. Dr. Ballard was the most famous man in the world that week. He was on the cover of every magazine, every newspaper. But something told me I had to get in touch with him, and I used, if you're old enough to remember what a phone book is, I used the phone book to track down Dr. Ballard. I called the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. Somebody, said, "Who may I say is calling?" I said, "This is Nelson Aspen." I was maybe 20 something years old. "This is Nelson Aspen calling for Dr. Ballard." And she put me on hold, and she came back, he came back. He actually took my call, and he answered the phone, and he went, "Hello, Milton?" Now, come on. If that isn't some kind of
Mhm.
metaphysical connection,
Yeah, right.
but so I'm the first one to poo-poo it. If anybody's reincarnated ever, I hope it will be my mom. She's the person I would really like to run into again. But I can't deny this thing that I have with Milton, and I've written a story that I hope does him proud. And I think most importantly, there were a lot of people on that ship who died, and even the people that lived did not live happily ever after. They forever were traumatized by post-traumatic stress, by survivor's guilt. Nobody really had a happy ending, even if they got off the ship. So nobody really knows about Milton. So here I am, 113 years later, saying his name, honoring his memory, as well as everybody else that perished. So I don't know. I feel like I did well
I
on
think you
Milton's behalf.
did. Yeah, and to be able to do that is absolutely extraordinary. Your vast personal Titanic expertise actually led to helping actress Alexandra Boyd landed a feature role in James Cameron's 1997 blockbuster film, which we all saw in the theater, and it was a tearjerker and so moving, by writing and coaching the audition material, right?
That's right, because
Wow.
she is my podcast co-host now, and uh, it was to promote her Initially, it was meant to promote her documentary about working on James Cameron's film, and it sort of took on this marvelous life of its own. But it was 1996 when she got the call to audition for the film, and she and I had already been friends for a decade by that point, and pre-internet. In 1996, if you even had the internet, it was and you're sort of typing away trying to figure out how to use it. But she knew that I was a Titanic fanatic. And she said, I don't know anything about the Titanic. I have to write this monologue. Will you help me? And I'm like, oh, I know just who we should make you. I know just what we're going to do. And we did it. She got the part. It changed her life. She worked on the film for months and months. And here she is 25 years later, still being a part of that Titanic community, as am I now. And I think back to, where did it all begin? Like I said, playing with ships in the pool. But the defining moment for me, if I had to really say, when did it all click? December 1971, I begged my mother to let me go to the movie theater and see, it was rated PG, so I was only 7 or 8 at the time, to see The Poseidon Adventure, the ultimate disaster movie about a ship at sea in peril. And Poseidon Adventure changed my life in so many ways. It really ignited my passion for the genre, and it introduced me to Carol Lindley, who was one of the stars of the film, who became a lifelong friend, a bit of a mentor. Calling her a mentor would be a little bit of an overreach because she made some bad choices along the way, but she was a great person and a great friend and loyal and loving, and we stayed friends till her passing in 2019. And she brought me into the Poseidon Adventure world, and that's a whole other club. Trust me. And there are a few of us left from that initial Poseidon club. But yeah, ships have been a contributing factor to my recreational and now professional interests. They say, do what you love and you never work a day in your life. That is absolutely true. Who would have thought that at this stage of my life, I would be getting to do all this Titanic fun?
Now, had you ever had a fear of the ships, considering, like you're talking about, the Titanic? And also, of course, we saw the Poseidon Adventure as well, which is an epic movie. It's around that time period, Towering Inferno, Earthquake, Roller Coaster, the Poseidon Adventure, all those disaster movies that were incredible. And they brought out everybody from Hollywood. And that one, of course, Gene Hackman, who we just lost, Stella Stevens, Ernie Borgnine, Shelley Winters, Jack Albertson. I mean, everybody was in that one. But it does, I don't want to give it all away for those who may not have seen this classic, but it does turn over with that rogue wave and everybody's upside down and then da-da-da-da. So that ship turns upside down. The Titanic sinks. No trepidation at all for you
Never. In
back
fact,
then? Or did that?
no. My parents were so switched on and cool that they recognized when I was 15 years old, so the late 70s, I was so into ships and I was so into movies that my parents sent me on a cruise that was sponsored by the American Film Institute, AFI. And it was a film lovers cruise. And people that went on the cruise would meet movie stars and see films and listen to lectures. And I mean, I was the geekiest 15-year-old that was my idea of heaven, was to go on this cruise. And I got to make friends with Olivia de Havilland's daughter, and I would dine with Olivia de Havilland and Glenn Ford and King Vidor. I mean, it was unbelievable for a 15-year-old movie geek. But the most thrilling thing for me was being on the ship. And I remember as this chubby 15-year-old in my stateroom, thinking, well, what would I do if the ship capsized like the Poseidon? Or what if, we were in the Caribbean, so it wasn't going to strike an iceberg. But I was not afraid in the least, because it even felt then as if I had been born for this moment. Between ships at sea and movie stars, I was right in my element.
I bet you would have loved to have been on an episode of The Love Boat.
Carol Lindley was.
Yeah, I know. Again, like anybody in Hollywood ended up on The Love Boat. Yeah, that would
Carol
have been
had the distinction of being in more episodes of Fantasy Island than any
Fantasy
other guest
Island.
star.
The plane, yeah, and Ricardo Montalban
She
and
had
crew.
great stories about Hervé Villachez, trust
Hervé
me. It's
Villachez.
happy hour here in New York, so cheers to you, Jim.
Cheers to you as well. Another Aaron Spelling production. We have a really nice video we want to show our viewers. We welcome everybody who's watching all around the world here on the Jim Masters Show, Celebrity Talk Show Series. Nelson Aspen, award-winning journalist and author, is joining us here from New York. And he is sharing this incredible tale and this new book that he's very excited about. And it is going to be something that I think will immediately be a bestseller. It's going to be a coffee table book. It's going to be a great reference point. And here, take a look at this. If our conversation doesn't do it for you, look at this. And then we'll be back with Nelson. Here we go.
Inspired by my own experience, Kindred Spirits, A Titanic Tale, is a historical fantasy that spans time and dimension, between the terrible frigid night in 1912 when Titanic met her tragic fate and the hedonistic party scene of modern Manhattan. This is a story of love and redemption denied to individuals by the constraints of the conservative world into which they were born. Critics say it's an original and totally unexpected story that's charming, heartwarming, witty, and sexy. One of the most unusual love stories you'll ever read. The author's passion burns on every page, weaving history with wit and charm, a joy to read. Unravel the mystery of two men from different centuries who are kindred spirits. Available on Amazon or ask for it at your local bookstore.
Really nice, really nice. And look, he's got it. And it's filled with photos and all kinds of cool things, huh?
Not too many photos. But believe me, it's filled with steamy situations. You don't want photos of that. You want to leave that to your imagination. I learned a lot. People are a little surprised. They think, wait a minute, it's sexy and it's about the Titanic. And I will point out that Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet had a moment in the car of, and you remember the drawing, "Paint me like one of your French girls." But I have to say, there was probably sexual situations on the Titanic. I am willing to wager that it was not a chaste voyage. It was elegant and charming. It was the ship of dreams. So I'm sure a few dreams were fulfilled before the iceberg.
Tell us too about something that people might not realize in thinking about, the Titanic, especially if they really know it from the movie or just references that they've heard, in history classes or on television, maybe some documentaries, things of that nature, how the oppressed sexuality of the Edwardian era in which Titanic sailed led to the inadvertent picking up of the baton for gay men of the time. Tell us about that.
Well, it's interesting because there are gay people everywhere, so there were certainly gay people on the Titanic. However, there are certain couples that were believed to be life partners aboard the Titanic, although because it was 1912 and certainly in Edwardian society, it wasn't something that was flaunted. And for me, I sort of imagined Milton, he never married. He was 29 years old when he died. He was an only child. And in a bittersweet, ironic thing, they had picked up his body. His body was recovered and returned to his parents in Massachusetts. And he is interred in a cemetery there, a beautiful, extravagant grave site they created for their son and themselves eventually. But they had 8 plots. The Long family had 8 plots. So it says to me that they were intending to have a large family that never eventuated. And Milton, although he attended both Columbia and Harvard universities, and his father was a judge. I mean, these were smart, educated, well-off people. And yet he never graduated from either. And his death certificate listed him as, quote, a gentleman of leisure, which essentially means he was running around vacationing, looking for something. And he made friends with another gentleman on the ship. Think what you will, but he made friends with another gentleman on the ship who survived and wrote the most touching correspondence to his family, to Milton's family, and sent him a photograph of himself to his parents saying, I think you would like to see who your son was with at the end. If you have a photo, would you send one back to me? I mean, they had a very close, immediate bond. And that's the story that I imagine is an unrequited love. Milton was obviously roaming the world looking for something, because other men of his class and age would by then have been married and starting a family, would certainly have had a career, or if they were, just independently wealthy, they would still be doing something other than running. And so in my story, Milton's looking for whatever happened to that fellow who survived through his new physical host. And they embark on a journey together. And the host person, me, that represents me, is a wild child. And Milton is more of the adult of the two of them. So they both learn a lot. Milton learns to come out literally and figuratively. And his host, named Preston, I wanted to do like the Nelson Milton, so I made him Preston. But Preston grows up a bit thanks to Milton. He learns how to take responsibility and grow up a bit. And it, not coincidentally, it's just as they're about to turn 30. They, not surprisingly, share a birthday. Not the same year, but the same month and day. And the story comes to a climax at the 30th birthday.
You're also appearing in Alexandra Boyd's new documentary, Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, telling the story of uncovering the connection to Titanic, even including a strange encounter with renowned oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard, who famously discovered the Titanic shipwreck back in 1985. And there is that wonderful Titanic. Tell us about that and being a part of that documentary.
Oh, it was great. Well, as I've said, I've known Alexandra since the late 80s, then helped her with the audition for James Cameron's movie in the late 90s. Even when I bought my first house in Hollywood, I had been renting a house, and then I was like, okay, I'm ready to buy my first house. And when I gave up the lease on the house I was renting, Alexandra moved in. So we have been very, very close for a very, very long time. So when she was making this documentary, she says, oh, I'd love to have you on and tell the story of writing the audition and the story of Milton. Because anybody who's known me long enough knows about Milton. He's like the brother nobody else has ever met. And so I got to tell that story in there, and the Dr. Ballard story when he answered the phone and called me Milton. And yes, we're going to be celebrating the anniversary of the sinking. And I don't, when I say celebrating, I should say commemorating. It's not a party, although the love for Titanic makes it a more festive occasion. It's somber, but it's sweet, if that makes sense. So we're actually going to be taking the anniversary weekend coming up in April and all getting together on the Queen Mary. The original beautiful ocean liner, the Queen Mary, which was the basis for the Poseidon adventure. The Queen Mary was hit by a rogue wave and almost capsized, and author Paul Gallico was on board, and that's what gave him the idea to write the novel, The Poseidon Adventure. And the exterior scenes for the Poseidon Adventure were shot on board the Queen Mary, which is now permanently docked in Long Beach, California. Long story short, a whole gang of us are going to the Queen Mary for April, whatever the weekend is right before the anniversary of the sinking, April 10th.
12th through 14th, yes. Yeah.
12th through 14th, thank you very much. I don't have my calendar in front of me. And I'll be launching the book there. There will be other historians and authors and actors and experts, super fans. And so I'm launching the book Titanic weekend there. And then I'll proceed to Los Angeles and then start my tour around the world. And on my website, I have all the cities: Baltimore, Boston, Titanic exhibitions, New York, of course, London, and then finishing up in May at the birthplace of Titanic, Belfast, Ireland. In the shipyards where Titanic was built, there is now an amazing world-class museum, the Titanic Museum, the Titanic Hotel, and the Titanic Distillers. So I think it's very appropriate that it's called Kindred Spirits, and I'll be doing something at the Distillers where they will make special Kindred Spirits. I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to that, right? TitanicWeekend.com is the website to learn more about that really incredible event, April 12th to 14th, Titanic Anniversary Weekend aboard the RMS Queen Mary, Long Beach, California.
Oh, great.
Enthusiast fans invited to attend, and you register there as well. Also, the 15th of April, that's a Tuesday, the actual anniversary of Titanic sinking, the Lobby Lounge of Four Seasons. That's going to be fantastic as well. And then, like you say, New York, London, it's going to be unbelievable what's happening, and congratulations on all of it. In addition to, let's talk about some of the theories and involvement in the enduring popularity of the films, the tragic implosion of the Titanic submersive diving to the wreck, which of course we know about was not that long ago, and other commemorations that are happening as well. Just there's been this overwhelming fascination with certain things in our lives and our history, like Titanic and other things, the Bermuda Triangle, and just different things that no matter what the generation is, it's still talked about. It's still sort of creates this curiosity for all of us. Sometimes we can't even get enough of whatever it is. Amelia Earhart and many others, the Lindbergh baby. Tell us about where that fascination comes from for the Titanic and why it still is prevalent today, Nelson.
Because everybody likes a mystery and everybody likes a conspiracy theory. And so it's not enough to say the Titanic hit an iceberg and sank. No, you gotta do a forensic analysis of why was this ship that was perceived as unsinkable? How did it sink on its first voyage, its only voyage? And the fact that it was discovered adds to the mystery, and that we can study it. And there are a million theories as to why. But what intrigues me is the romanticizing of a global tragedy that cost so many lives. We don't think of 9/11 as a romantic. James Cameron would never do a Romeo and Juliet story on 9/11 or the Challenger explosion or a tsunami somewhere. There's something about Titanic. And I've come to the conclusion, although we'll never really know why it fascinates us the way it does, but it's a lost era. The way that Gone with the Wind romanticized the Civil War marked the end of an era. Titanic marked the end of the Edwardian era. And things were never the same after that. People got onto that ship thinking this ship is the height of technology, the height of luxury. People in steerage, there were many who'd never seen a toilet, a proper plumbing toilet before. That was a new luxury in third class for many people. And the thought that it could be so quickly, in just a matter of days, vanish from the earth with this loss of life, just when man had sort of towered over technology and towered over nature. We're just going to plow right through a field of ice. We're going to ignore those ice warnings and just go through because we're unsinkable. Ironically, if they had hit the iceberg head on, they probably would have not sunk. They could have, the compartments that would have been struck would have filled, but they still could have stayed afloat. The fact that they tried to turn is most likely what led to the ultimate disaster of it all. But there is just something about it. And there have been over a dozen films and countless documentaries and books and things. But every now and then something like James Cameron's film comes along that reignites a generation's interest. And this is something we've learned through the podcast. The Titanic is not just something that's interesting to baby boomers like myself. The Titanic is interesting to 6-year-olds, to teenagers. It knows no demographic. Everybody knows the Titanic. It's part of our vernacular. Oh, it's like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Oh, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's part of our language now. The Titanic is part of it. And you mentioned the submersible, the Titan. I mean, what were they thinking, naming it the Titan? It imploded while taking a bunch of travel tourists, adventure tourism. Like, there's plenty of adventure tourism out there. Whatever risk you want to take, you can go pay to take it. So these folks paid a lot of money to go down and look, ogle the wreck. And they paid for it with their lives. And I think we're not learning the lessons of, you're never going to beat Mother Nature. You're never going to beat the ocean. What the ocean wants, the ocean will take. And no amount of technology or money, that hubris, that attitude that you can beat nature, you're never going to win.
No, not at all. As we've seen recently with some of the natural disasters and storms, and which seem bigger than ever now, you just have to adapt and try to get through it, but you're not going to beat it. And how long in writing the book, for first putting those first few words down on paper, and then putting the last period on the last word on the last sentence, how long was that process? I mean, it's extensive research and thoughtfully written and very detailed, lovingly, but yet, of course, factual and raw and real. How long was that process, and what was the process like for you? Was it emotional as well?
At the end, it was surprisingly emotional when I finished. As I was doing it, I had it all in my head because it's my story. It's my story with Milton. It sort of wrote itself, and I was, I'm not surprisingly to anyone who knows me, a little OCD and constantly making notes, and I never really sleep, and I'm taking notes while I sleep, and I'm monitoring my dreams and writing things down, and I have to do things in the morning, and I go for my run, and I'm making notes while I run. However, because it was going to be set, I had to fictionalize it to be set in the modern day and not tell my story as it actually happened to me through the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and so on. I had the very good fortune to be assigned a marvelous editor who is half my age and specializes in historical fantasy, which was a new genre for me. I'm a reporter, so I write the facts, ma'am, only the facts. And to create this fantasy universe, his expertise at half my age was the rules of historical fantasy. And he explained and taught and shepherded me through, if you're going to create a magical world, a paranormal world, a metaphysical world, you have to firmly establish the rules of that world and then stick to them. And if you stray from the rules that you set up for your imaginary universe, the reader will know it. As soon as you break the rules, they'll call you out on it and you'll lose them. So it was an interesting process. That was the real labor-intensive part for me. And expanding what Milton's backstory may have been. Why was he coming to Titanic from San Moritz? We have no idea. But I created a story that would justify his bittersweet loneliness. And I created a story about what happened to him in San Moritz, that he took the Titanic to get back to America. What happened to him on the campus of Columbia University, that he dropped out of school? So those were the creative writing exercises for me, which was tremendous fun. And also the fact that my editor is a 30-year-old man was great, because I think, oh yeah, well, I know what it's like to be 30. I've been 30 more than a few times. I'll just do it in my sleep. But he, he was able to call me out and was like, that's not the way a 30-year-old is going to express this. And that's not, so he helped me bridge the generation gap with that. So it was very collaborative. And when I got to the end, I guess maybe from concept to execution was about a year, but all the research I've been doing for my lifetime. So you could say it was a 60-year project. But when I got to the end and I knew it was finished and I signed off on the edit, boy, I missed Milton. And I was like, well, there's no sequel to be had, and it's not going to be a sitcom or anything like that. But I missed him. Like now, there it is, beginning to end, my take anyway, on Milton's life. So I can visit him in the book. Maybe if we make a movie of it, I'll visit him in the movie.
Are there descendants, family members, others?
No. That was another part of the sad thing about that his grave, it was built for 8, and it's just Milton and his folks, which is sad.
Otherwise, yeah, sure, there would be a whole list of people.
Hey, I don't have a plot yet. I wonder who I call.
You're a journalist. You're a journalist. You always have a plot.
Very good.
Different kind. But that's exciting. It really is. And do you see the book morphing into something that is streaming or video or any of that? Look at that. Look at that face.
A 30-year career in Hollywood. I mean, come on. Yes, I have a meeting. We'll see.
Yes, I have a meeting.
Wouldn't that be nice?
It really would be, huh? It would be exciting.
And the Titanic, everybody just wants to see the ship sink. But it's my story. Yes, it time travels between 2025 and 1912. But it's, there are scenes aboard Titanic, and I won't give any spoilers. But it's less about the time on the Titanic than it is about Milton finding his way in 2025 and the coming of age story. It really is a coming of age story for these two men of different times who are fused together and have to grow.
Do you feel, and I've interviewed in some of my professional work in television, radio, people who, it was one person who worked in the federal government. She's now retired in DC, and she had a soulmate that she found when her mother was in the hospital. And this person who came from Europe happened to be the one that was taking care of her mother at the hospital, the nurse. And for some reason, there was this immediate, she's married with kids, he's married with kids, but there was a soul connection that was hard to even put in words. She wrote a book about it too. And it was automatic. Do you feel at all that there was a soul connection, soulmate connection between you and Milton?
Absolutely, 100%. And I don't know, I feel that with my husband. We've been married coming up on 3 years, but have been together for 11 years. I would like to think that any of those kinds of relationships are soulmates. I felt that with my mom. If anybody's going to be reincarnated, I hope it's my mom. I'd like to encounter her again. But
what was her name?
Joyce Ann. Joyce
Ann. She's watching right now. She's with you.
Oh my God, are you kidding? What
was she like?
In the mirror, she's looking back at me. I'm like, Mother, leave me alone for 5 minutes.
What's her personality? Is it vivacious, bubbly, and?
Yeah, it's
I'm here.
She's everywhere. I can't get away from her, and I don't want to. But the whole idea of soulmates, and I delve into this in the book.
Yeah,
I found a book sometime in the early 80s called "You Were Born Again to Be Together." I found it in a used bookshop, and I don't know, it just was interesting to me. I picked it up, probably read it on the subways. You were born again to be together. So when I was writing the book, thanks to the internet, I looked it up again because I never forgot the title, even though it had been decades since I read it. And so in the book, I have my character find it in a used bookshop. And the premise of it is that all the important relationships in your life, good and bad, because it's not just, I mean, kindred spirits are not always happy love matches. Sometimes you wonder, why am I drawn to this terrible person? Or what did I do to deserve this abuse from that person? And the premise of that book was that, hey, you're still working it out from past lives. Your relationships, both good and bad, are not new. You've been there before, and you now have an opportunity to work it out, to improve it. And that you're just the book claimed that each lifetime is a way to keep working things out. And I think that's very interesting. And it does explain why we're drawn to people who aren't good to us or good for us. And it also explains why, as in the case you cited, sometimes you have this marvelous connection with what really should be a total stranger.
That is so very, very true. It really is. You mentioned the emotional component to the ending of it. When did you know with this extraordinary book you were done? It was good. You were comfortable with it. Maybe you've done rewrites, what have you, but you were comfortable enough to say, I'm going to now finish it. It's all done. I'm going to let it, pun intended, set sail. I'm going to now have the public dive in and feel some of what I've been trying to express. When did you know and when did you feel you were done, comfortable, and ready to let that child go out into the public?
Well, I had to have Milton and Preston reach some satisfaction. I needed them both to appreciate the fact that they were at peace, that Milton's torment and unfulfilled life was filled, and then this wild child of today, Preston, that he grew up, and they find satisfaction. I won't spoil how they find satisfaction, but they come to a point where they have grown up. They've realized their true selves. That's a good way to put it. They've realized their true selves, both of them. And that was when, okay, this is, and I was able to construct a scenario that involves Titanic, wherein they could find that satisfaction and go each live their lives, even though one of them wasn't living today.
This is exciting. And again, you've been going all over touting the book and sharing the book. And I know you told us earlier when you were with us last time on our show as a guest, this, I believe, is the third time you've been with us. This is your trifecta.
Yes. I was going to say a three-way, but okay, a trifecta.
He's a Jim Masters show regular now. He's a regular. You'll see him again because he's always doing things. And anytime he wants to stop by, he's always welcome. The porch light, I said, was on for him, and it still is. What are some other exciting things you're working on separate from this project?
Thank you for asking. As it relates to Kindred Spirits, we talked last year about my Tony Bennett tribute show. When the last time I was here with you, I was doing, Tony Bennett had passed away. I had this marvelous at-home interview with him, and I had these marvelous, really bespoke clips. And I did a tribute show with my friend Alison Briggs. She sort of took on the roles of Amy Winehouse and Lady Gaga and Judy Garland. She did all the female roles, and I did Tony Bennett. And it was not an imitation. We were not trying to imitate them, but we used Tony's actual arrangements. We did our own versions of Tony's arrangements interspersed with clips from my at-home interview with him. So that was last year. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Turns out we got nominated for seven Broadway World Cabaret Awards, and we won 3. Best Tribute, Best Jazz Vocal, and I'm like, I still think I sing in the shower, but Best Jazz Vocal, and ta-da, Best Show. So it was a huge honor that we were recognized for that. So I started thinking, Oh gosh, the Broadway world people are going to be saying, "What are you doing in 2025? You won Best Show last year. What are you doing this year?" I thought, "Oh God, what can I come up with? I got to do something because I'm never going to win Best Show again. That was a one-off, but I gotta follow it up with something." And I thought, Kindred Spirits, the musical. So, so in July, in New York, all the details are on my website. I'm doing Kindred Spirits, A Titanic Tale, the musical. Allison will be one of my guest stars. And the premise of the show will be I will tell some of the stories of Milton Long, some of the stories of my connection with Milton. We'll have a big screen projector going behind us with images of Milton, images of my adventures on, all my shipboard excitement over the years. Relevant to the Kindred Spirits story with songs that are appropriate from the Great American Songbook, and then do a book signing after the show. So it's a great way to mix all of my loves. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's in July here in New York City. So if you're getting to New York in July, I got something for you to do. And then I do a weekly political show for GB News, which is a British morning news show. Well, it's 24-hour channel, but
Yeah.
I do a morning show on the weekends, and then I fill in and do bits during the week. But I'm always on Saturday mornings, and this has been fascinating because, as you know, I've spent 30 years of my life covering the show business beat, and they invited me to start covering the presidential election last year. And I thought, oh, this is a gig that will last until November. And they're like, oh, we really like having you on. Can you stay till he's sworn in? So I stayed through the transition of the new presidency. And then, I just never left. So I'm still there on Saturday mornings. And it's fun because I'm getting to use muscles that are new to me. The political world has always been fascinating and of interest to me. But I've been so busy covering Hollywood for so long that it's a new arena. So it's fresh and it's interesting, and it sparks my journalistic passions. And quite frankly, politicians are really no different than Hollywood celebrities. It's just a different genre, but it's the same. You really are using the same skills and the same style. It's just you're talking politics instead of showbiz.
It really is. There are so many similarities, and it weaves in and out, and it's extraordinary. And I'm sure that you are very busy with that about now.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable the speed with which things unfold. And because I'm on Saturdays, I'm always paying attention to the news. But on Wednesdays, I start really thinking, all right, so what am I going to do on Saturday? And then Thursday, I wake up and I'm like, oh, throw that out. That's 24 hours old. What's happening today? And then Friday comes along and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There's
Yeah,
this happened today. And then I get up at four
every
in the
day.
morning.
Yeah.
Saturday mornings, the alarm goes off at 4 a.m. And the first thing I do is jump online because it's
Right.
all changed again overnight.
By the minute, by the hour,
Yep.
faster than ever. And with technology and all, it just ramps it up and makes it even quicker. The book is really something very, very
Thank you.
special. And I know it's been a labor of love and something that you've been very proud of. And feedback, I mean, it's just come out, but feedback thus far, what has that been like?
It's very flattering, and people understand. It seems to me so far, they not only appreciate the history of Titanic that goes with the book, but they're highly entertained. And people are saying, they didn't see that coming. They didn't see, because there are twists and turns. It's an adventure story. It's a mystery, and they weren't expect. I didn't expect that ending. I did. There hasn't been a Titanic. I've read them all. There hasn't been a Titanic book quite like this one that I can find anywhere, and it's tremendously flattering. And I watch the little rankings on Amazon, and they change from day to day, but it's doing very well. I'll be excited to see the quarterly reports, but for now I'm having a good time spreading the word and sharing the story. And you see the cover there. through the Titanic community, which is a beautiful thing. I've coined the phrase Titaniac. We are Titaniacs. And within the Titanic community, largely and thanks to the podcast, we are meeting Titaniacs from all over the world who want to share their stories. And a lot of them I've put into the book in cameo roles. Some appear as themselves, some are quite clearly, so-and-so and so-and-so. And then even the cover design, there's an amazing pencil. This is an original pencil sketch by a brilliant Titanic fan artist named Greg DiNapoli. And then he lives here on the East Coast, and we got to meet a couple times. And I asked him to do the cover. The gentleman who wrote the foreword is a marvelous person who's a producer and an actor named Paul Carganilla. He wrote the foreword for me, and it's just perfect. So it's a group effort, and you know how this goes. You're such a master at creating a repertory of people around you. And that's everybody's dream. You want to work with the people whose work you respect, whose personalities you love. And that's not nepotism, that's smart business. You want to be around those people. So to create a book with an editor I loved, an artist I loved, a guy that wrote the foreword that I love, and insert characters from my community, oh my gosh, it's a one in a zillion opportunity.
I tell you, it's really very, very exciting. And you were telling me bits and pieces of it last time, and to see it actually come to fruition and to have it at this very important time too, I think it's just so beautifully done. The 113th anniversary commemoration as part of that. Here he is, best-selling author Nelson Aspen with that new book, Kindred Spirits, A Titanic Tale. It's very touching. It is. It's very touching because I'm sure as you were focusing on your story and with Milton, there are probably some other nuggets and things you learned about the whole Titanic experience that you didn't even know until you really dove into this project.
Absolutely. And there were thousands of people on that ship. We only ever seem to talk about John Jacob Astor and Molly Brown, but now we're talking about Milton Long, but there are many stories to be told. And then you start to think about that, and it's like there's a universe of stories to be told. So if you're a storyteller, go find your story, go find someone's story to tell. And I love all my children equally, my books. Now that I have 9 children, I love them all equally, but I am very high. I guess this is why the baby always gets spoiled. I'm very high on my newborn.
He started out with 1, then it was 2, and then first there was the courtship of Eddie's father, the 1.
Yours, mine, and ours.
And then he moved into 6, Brady Bunch. Now he's aiming for Waltons, I think.
Yeah, 8 was enough until it wasn't.
8 is enough, right? Good old Dick Van Patten, Betty Buckley.
Diana Hyland. I was going to say Diana Vreeland, wrong Diana.
Right. Who at the time was John Travolta and she were together, right?
Boy in the plastic bubble. We can play this game all night.
That's right. Oh yeah, you and I would be amazing. We'd have so much fun at that. Maybe we'll do an episode where that's what we do.
Yes, reference, like a tennis match.
Just like, absolutely. Congratulations on it, my friend. And I encourage folks, you can go to Amazon and Barnes & Noble where books are sold too. And there's information. If you're watching this a year from now, of course, go get the book if you haven't. But there is this event coming in April, TitanicWeekend.com. Learn more about that extraordinary, rare, almost once in a lifetime situation. And of course, there is Nelson's site. Everything Nelson is there, nelsonaspen.com. And again, go get that book. Everybody's raving about it. It's probably going to wind up being in another printing. It's going to sell out so quickly. But very, very happy that you're sharing the story because it is history and it is something of legend. And you're sort of opening it up and bringing us into that world in a very personal way, not the typical way where it's just in a news fashion, but with heartwarming story and tale. And I think that's a beautiful way to learn more about the event through your eyes and your heart, and bringing in Milton and that link that has existed all these years. So kudos to you, my friend. Congratulations. And thanks for stopping by our show and sharing all of this, and being so open and authentic and real about it and passionate about it. We're so happy for you. And come back and see us again. That porch light is still on for you for the next time. And always love, it's a delight to have you here. Love having you with us. And once again, I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I have with you, Nelson.
You are the best, and you're so generous and gracious. And I've always said I understand what you do and how challenging it can be to do what you do. And the key is you're a host. You're not just the host of the show, but you extend the courtesies, the hospitality of a host as if we were in your home. So thank you, and I'm very grateful to be invited.
Pleasure is all mine. And you're a big fan and supporter of the show, so continue to spread the word for us about the series, and we shall do the same about the book and everything else you're doing, my friend. And again, congratulations to you, and continued success. We'll be in touch. Nelson and I chat all the time, and we'll have you back soon on the next venture, right?
Thanks, Jim. Smooth sailing. I wish you nothing but smooth sailing.
Smooth sailing. Absolutely. You be well, okay?
You too, sir. Thank you.
Take care, my friend. Nelson Aspen here on the Jim Masters Show, Entertainment Lifestyle Celebrity Talk Show series. There's the book, Kindred Spirits, A Titanic Tale. Nelson Aspen really sharing something very special with us and with the world as we think about the Titanic and the many, many, many lives that were lost and the stories that were told. This is a unique one that Nelson is sharing. And again, you can go to nelsonaspen.com if you want to be a part of the Titanic Weekend. That is titanicweekend.com as well. How cool was that, right? If you enjoyed this episode of the Jim Masters Show series, we're always putting on something unique, special, all kinds of great celebrity friends and guests from all different backgrounds and all levels of celebrity and specialness joining us here on the show. We encourage you to give this episode a like. Click that thumbs up like on the YouTube channel next to the episode, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV, where there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes with amazing guests and phenomenal conversations, laughs, and so much more, poignant stories. Share this episode on your social media and leave a comment for us right there below. Leave a comment for us as well. What did you enjoy about this episode or some of the other episodes? And maybe you even have a Titanic story or two that you want to share. And maybe you've learned something through our conversation as well, whatever the case may be. It's always great to have you here. Don't forget to love one another, take care of one another, and take care of yourself. We always say that here on the Jim Masters Show. It's really important to do that. Don't forget to breathe from the diaphragm and to relax. Crazy times, crazy world out there. This is a solace, a place, we call it Levity Hall, Jim Masters Show, to come and be together with everybody around the world and enjoy these great guests and amazing stories and lots of fun as well. We'll see you on the next one. Keep the porch light on for you as well. This is your host, Jim Masters, thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, come see us again. We will be right here waiting for you on the Jim Masters Show. Be well, everybody, and cheers.